The night shift on Helios 9 space station was normally quiet. Lights were low, machines hummed softly, and most crew members rested in their sleeping pods. But on this night, something disturbed the peace again. A thin, shaking sound drifted through the empty halls like a cold wind. It was a sound everyone on the station had learned to fear, the crying of the dragon Hatchlings. The noise started softly, like tiny gasps. Then it grew into a long, weak wail that made even brave soldiers feel tense. The sound held sadness, pain, and fear all at once. It was not the roar of the great adult dragons heard in stories. It was the helpless cry of babies who did not understand the world around them. People tried to ignore it. They walked faster in the hallways and pretended the sound did not reach them. Some covered their ears. Some complained to their commanders. Some whispered that keeping dragon hatchlings in a research station was a mistake from the start. But no one wanted to go near the nursery room after midnight, except one person. Evan, the human janitor, swept the long metal hallway with quiet footsteps. He was used to being invisible on the station. Most crew members did not even remember his name. They walked past him as if he were part of the walls. But Evan did not mind. He liked peace. He liked his small job. He liked helping the station run smoothly in little ways. No one noticed, but he did notice the crying. He always did. Every night for the last week, the sound had returned. And each night, it grew worse. It no longer sounded like simple crying. It sounded like the small creatures were breaking inside, piece by piece. It sounded like their tiny hearts were calling for something that never came. Evan paused in his sweeping and listened again. The crying shook slightly, then rose into a sharp sob. The kind made by someone who could no longer hold back their sadness. Evan stood still for a moment, feeling the sound travel through him. He could not understand why no one comforted them. Yes, they were dragon hatchlings. Yes, they came from a species known for fire, claws, and fierce battles. But these were babies. They were alone in a cold, strange place. Their mother had died before they ever saw her. Their world was a room of metal walls and heat lamps. Nothing soft. Nothing warm. Nothing alive that cared for them. Of course they cried. Evan set the broom aside and took a breath. He knew he was not supposed to enter the nursery without permission. That room belonged to the scientists, not the janitors. But still, something felt wrong to him tonight. The crying was not its usual rhythm. It had a new, harsh edge, like desperate fear. He walked toward the nursery door. The hallway lights flickered slightly as he approached. A warning sign glowed on the wall. Caution dragon. Hatchlings inside. Authorized staff only. Evan looked at the sign for a long moment. Then he touched the door panel. His janitor pass still allowed basic access. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Warm air floated out. It felt gentle at first, like stepping into a heated room. But the crying hit him like a wave. The hatchlings were louder inside. Much louder. Evan stepped carefully into the room. Red heat lamps glowed like small suns on the ceiling, throwing soft shadows across the floor. In the center of the room stood a round nest made of metallic cushions and warm coils. Inside it, 6 tiny dragonlings huddled together, shaking. Their small wings were folded tight against their bodies. Their scales shimmered with dull light, dimmed by fear. Their eyes, glowing faint gold, were wet with tears. Evan had never seen baby dragons up close, not this close. He expected to feel fear. But instead, he felt something else. A deep, sharp ache in his chest. They looked so lost. So lonely. So small for creatures expected to grow into legendary beasts. One hatchling lifted its head, weakly, and let out a trembling cry. Another pressed its face into its sibling, seeking comfort that none of them could give. Their bodies shook harder with each passing second. Evan stepped closer, moving slowly so he would not scare them. The floor creaked under his boots, and all 6 heads turned toward him at once. Their cries stopped. The room fell silent. They watched him with wide, glowing eyes. Evan did not know why, but in that moment, he felt they were asking him something. Asking for help. Asking for warmth. Asking not to be alone. He kneeled down, placing himself at their level, and whispered softly, "It's okay. I'm here." And for the first time in many nights, the dragonlings did not cry louder that they listened. The dragon hatchlings did not move at first. They stared at Evan as if they were trying to decide what he was. He was not one of the tall officers with cold eyes. He was not one of the scientists with metal gloves and scanning tools. He was something different, soft, quiet, steady. Evan felt the warm air wrap around him like a blanket. The heat lamps hummed softly overhead. The nest glowed with gentle orange light, but the little dragons inside looked far from warm. Their bodies trembled. Their tails curled tightly around themselves. Even from a few steps away, he could see the fine shaking in their wings. He moved a little closer and sat on the floor. The metal felt hot under him. He placed his hands on his knees and kept them open, palms showing. He wanted to look harmless. Not a threat. Not another person who came to poke or scan or test. "It's okay," he said again in a gentle voice. "I won't hurt you." One of the hatchlings, a tiny one with silver-tipped scales, let out a soft, broken chirp. Evan's heart squeezed. It was the smallest baby sound he had ever heard, and yet it echoed like it came from somewhere very deep. The little dragon's chest heaved unevenly, as if it had been crying for too long. Evan knew that kind of cry. He had heard children cry like that back on Earth, in orphan shelters, in emergency stations, in places where no one hugged them. He had never imagined dragons could sound the same. The largest hatchling, still no bigger than a house cat, stood up slowly. Its wings opened halfway, trembling like leaves in wind. It stepped forward once, then stopped, unsure. Its golden eyes studied Evan's face. It tilted its head, curious and frightened at the same time. Evan did not move. The hatchling took another step, and another. The other babies watched it with hopeful eyes, as if waiting to see if this strange human was safe. Evan smiled slightly. Not a big smile, just a warm one. "Hey there, brave one." The hatchling let out a soft puff of warm air. Not fire, just breath. Its tiny claws clicked gently on the metal floor as it approached. When it reached Evan's knee, it stretched its neck and sniffed his sleeve. Its nose was warm and smooth, almost like a rubbery pebble. Evan slowly lowered one hand, giving the hatchling time to pull away if it wanted. It didn't. Instead, it pressed its head against his palm, as if testing the texture of human skin. Its scales shimmered when it breathed. A sound came from the nest, a soft chorus of chirps, uncertain but hopeful. The other hatchlings were gathering their courage. One by one, they crawled out of the nest. Their movements were clumsy, their wings dragging slightly behind them. But once they stepped onto the floor, they moved faster. Drawn to the human who was not afraid, Evan felt a small weight against his boot as the silver-tipped hatchling pressed close, curling around his ankle. Another climbed onto his leg, tiny claws gripping gently but firmly. A third nudged his arm, seeking comfort. He let out a slow breath. "It's all right. I'm here. You're not alone." He glanced at the walls around him. Cameras blinked silently. Someone was watching. The scientists always watched the nursery at night, waiting for data, for patterns, for something they could measure. But they had never seen this. No human had come close without a protective suit before. No one had dared. Evan wondered what the officers would say if they saw him now sitting on the floor with dragon hatchlings crawling over him like frightened kittens. One hatchling, dark green with tiny glowing lines along its spine, rubbed its head against Evan's chest. It let out a soft sigh, then rested its whole body against him. Another curled up behind his back, using him as a warm shield from the cold air outside the heat lamps. The smallest climbed into his lap and rested there, tired from crying. Evan placed a gentle hand on the little one in his lap. The hatchling relaxed instantly. Its breathing slowed. Its tail wrapped lightly around his wrist. For the first time since they were born, the dragon babies felt safe. Evan knew this was not something planned by scientists or predicted by reports. This was something simple, something natural, something living things had needed since the beginning of time. Warmth, kindness, someone who stayed close instead of walking away. The hatchlings closed their eyes, not all at once, but slowly, one by one. Their trembling faded. Their bodies softened against him. Evan stayed completely still. He did not want to break the moment. He whispered, barely above a breath, "I'll take care of you. I promise." And in that warm, quiet room, surrounded by tiny dragons who had cried for many nights, his promise felt like the first real hope they had ever known. For a long moment, Evan sat there, unsure if he should breathe too loudly. 6 dragon hatchlings were pressed against him, curled around him, or sleeping in his lap as if he were some kind of living nest. Their small bodies were warm like heated stones, but their touch was gentle, careful, almost shy. No one on Helios 9 had ever been this close to a baby dragon without wearing full armor. No one had even considered it safe. Yet here he was, just a janitor in a soft gray uniform, surrounded by the galaxy's most feared young species. Evan slowly reached for a clean cloth from the small supply pouch on his belt. It was just a folded towel meant for wiping surfaces. But to the hatchlings, it might feel like something soft and comforting, something they had never been given. He lifted the cloth and held it where all 6 could see. The smallest hatchling opened its eyes and stared at the cloth as if it were studying a rare treasure. Its tiny nose twitched. Then it reached out with one claw and touched the fabric, pulling it closer. Evan let the cloth fall gently over the baby's back. The hatchling froze. Then slowly, it relaxed. A soft rumble came from its throat. Not a cry, not fear, a purr. Evan felt his heart warm. "You like that, huh?" Another hatchling chirped at him impatiently, as if saying, "Me too." Evan picked up the edge of the cloth and spread it a little wider so another could press under it. Soon, 2 of them shared the soft fabric like siblings hiding beneath a blanket. The others watched with wide eyes. They shuffled closer, bumping gently against Evan's legs and arms. Their wings brushed against his sleeves, thin and delicate like the leaves of a glowing plant. Each hatchling made small noises, soft trills, little chirps, tiny huffs of warm air sounds that were not in any human science report. These sounds were the sounds of trust. One bold hatchling crawled up his arm. Its claws were sharp but careful, never breaking the skin. When it reached his shoulder, it sniffed his cheek with warm breath. Evan held perfectly still. The little dragon's glowing golden eyes locked onto his. The creature chirped once, high and bright, like it had declared him acceptable. Another hatchling, the green one with glowing lines along its spine, nudged Evan's knee. When he looked down, the creature tapped his shoe with its snout. Then it climbed onto the toe of his boot and sat there proudly, as if claiming the spot as its throne. Evan laughed under his breath. "Is that comfortable?" The dragonling made a soft clicking sound that felt like a yes. Above them, a small humming sound began. One of the heat lamps shifted to adjust its temperature automatically. The movement cast new shadows across the room, and those shadows caught the attention of the hatchlings. One by one, they lifted their heads. Not in fear, but in curiosity. Tiny wings unfurled halfway. Small tails twitched eagerly. They were ready to explore. More than that, they were ready to stay close to him while doing it. The boldest hatchling crawled down from Evan's shoulder and stepped into the center of the room. It looked back at him once, chirped softly, and then tapped the floor with its foot. Evan blinked. "Do you want me to come with you?" The hatchling chirped again, so he reached out his hand and placed it on the warm floor. Immediately, 2 hatchlings climbed onto it, their bodies light but full of life. He gently carried them forward, crawling on his knees so he didn't tower over them. Like a giant, this was their first adventure outside the nest since hatching, and they wanted him with them. The bold hatchling led the group toward a nearby heating coil. It sniffed the air, then looked back at Evan again, chirping as if asking for approval. Evan nodded. "Go ahead. It's safe." The little dragon tapped the coil, felt the heat, and made a satisfied purr. The others followed, forming a tiny line behind it. For a few minutes, they explored the room with Evan as their center point. Every time they wandered farther than a few steps, they ran back to him quickly, brushing against his arms or legs as if checking to make sure their human anchor was still. Not one of them cried, not one of them trembled, not one looked afraid. Evan felt something shift inside him, and understanding that no scientific scanner could ever capture. These creatures weren't dangerous monsters. They weren't unpredictable weapons. They were children, lonely, frightened, and longing for warmth. And they had chosen him. Across the room, a security camera moved quietly, tracking the scene from above. Somewhere in a monitoring room, officers and scientists were watching, shocked, confused, maybe even frightened. But Evan didn't notice the camera. He was too busy letting a tiny dragon hatchling climb into his hand so it could curl against his chest, purring softly like a living ember. For the first time in their short lives, the dragonlings had made contact. True contact, not with soldiers, not with scientists. But with a human heart. The room felt different now, warmer, softer, almost alive. It was strange, Evan thought, how 6 tiny dragons could change the air simply by trusting someone. Their presence felt like warm electricity, a gentle pulse moving through the space, filling it with something that felt almost like hope. The smallest hatchling, still wrapped partly in the cloth, blinked slowly at him. It was fighting sleep. Evan could tell by the way its eyelids dipped and lifted again, struggling to stay awake, afraid that if it slept, the comfort might disappear. "You can rest," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." The tiny dragon let out a small breath and curled into a soft ball against his stomach. It tucked its head under Evan's hand as if his palm was a shield against the world. When that happened, something inside Evan cracked open. A simple human instinct. One older than space travel, older than technology, older than war. Protect them. Hold them. Keep them safe. Without thinking, he wrapped one arm gently around the cluster of hatchlings, leaning against him. The babies pressed closer, their scales warm against his skin. A soft vibration hummed through their bodies, tiny purrs that resonated like the buzz of distant stars. Evan had never heard dragons purr before. No report had ever mentioned it, but now, with their little chests rising and falling slowly, he understood something the scientists had missed. These creatures were not built only for fire and fear. They were built for closeness. The largest hatchling, the bold one who had approached him first, lifted its head and studied Evan's face. Its golden eyes glowed like twin suns. Slowly, carefully, it stepped onto Evan's lap and stretched, its neck upward. Evan paused. The hatchling pressed its forehead against his chest. A simple gesture, but powerful. It was the same motion newborn animals made when searching for the heartbeat of their parents. It was a request, not just for warmth, but for comfort, for connection, for something living and steady. Evan placed his hand gently around the hatchling's back. Its small body relaxed instantly. "It's all right," he murmured. "I've got you." The room quieted further as more hatchlings nestled against him. One rested on his shoulder like a sleepy bird. Another curled at his side, pressing its tail along his ribs. Two more curled around his legs like warm rings of living gold and green. All 6 babies were touching him in some way. All 6 had chosen him. Above them, the security camera clicked softly, adjusting focus. Someone was watching. Maybe many people. But Evan didn't care. His only focus was the small beings trembling softly against him, their earlier fear melting away with every passing second. He shifted slightly, supporting the hatchling on his shoulder so it wouldn't slip. Its tiny claws hooked gently into his sleeve, careful not to scratch. The dragonling made a quiet cooing sound that melted his heart completely. "You're all right," he whispered again. "You're safe." Humans had invented thousands of tools for calming creature scanners, sound machines, artificial heartbeats, but none of those things mattered now. What the hatchlings needed wasn't a machine. They needed a person, someone who didn't treat them like experiments, someone who didn't fear them, someone who stayed. A soft, warm light glowed across the walls as the heat lamps lowered slightly to match the baby's calm heart rates. Even the room itself seemed to react to their peaceful state, as if the nursery were relieved too. One by one, the hatchlings drifted off to sleep. Their breathing sensed, slow and steady. Their bodies warmed his skin through his uniform, but not all of them slept immediately. The bold hatchling lifted its head again and stared at him with deep, ancient eyes, as if it sensed something in him that went beyond gentle gestures. Evan met its gaze. "What is it?" he asked softly. The little dragon inhaled deeply and then very slowly placed its forehead on Evan's chest again, pressing its whole weight into him. A tiny pulse of heat spread outward. Not burning, but warm like sunlight. Evan froze. Was this a dragon instinct? A recognition? Or was it something simpler? A thank you. Evan's throat tightened. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the warm scent of the hatchlings like heated stone, mixed with faint sparks of energy he didn't understand. He whispered, without meaning to, "You're not monsters. You're just babies. Scared, alone, and doing your best." The bold hatchling's purring deepened. Outside the nursery door, unseen by Evan, officers gathered around a viewing screen. Their eyes were wide. Their voices were whispers. "He's calming them. They've never slept like this. No human has ever held dragon hatchlings. This changes everything." But inside the room, none of that mattered. All that mattered was a human janitor holding 6 dragon babies, close, offering them something they had never known before. Comfort, warmth, and love that needed no science to explain. The peace inside the nursery did not last long. For several minutes, Evan sat there with the hatchlings sleeping against him. Their warm bodies felt like living embers, small suns resting on his arms and legs. Their soft purrs vibrated through him like a gentle lullaby. It was the calmest moment the station had seen since the dragons arrived. But beyond the nursery door, footsteps echoed, sharp, fast, angry. Evan did not hear them at first. He was too focused on the tiny creatures breathing quietly against his chest. But the hatchlings sensed something. Their ears twitched. Their tails tightened. A faint tremor ran through their bodies. One opened its eyes and let out a low, worried chirp. Evan frowned. Hey, it's okay. You're all right." But the hatchlings weren't looking at him. They were looking at the door. A moment later, the door slid open with a harsh metallic sigh. Bright white hallway lights spilled inside, flooding the soft red glow of the nursery. Evan squinted, raising a hand instinctively to shield the babies. 3 officers marched in, followed by a tall figure in silver robes, the Galactic Research Council's representative. Evan's heart sank. He had seen that robe only once before, during the memorial for the dragon's mother. It meant decisions, big ones and rarely kind ones. The robed figure stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. His voice came out cold and smooth, like polished steel. "What is the meaning of this?" Evan swallowed hard. They were crying. Just a janitor, one officer snapped. You were ordered to stay out of the nursery. The hatchlings cried out the moment the officer stepped closer. Tiny, sharp cries, fear mixed with panic. Their bodies pressed tighter against Evan, claws gripping his uniform, wings wrapping around their siblings. Evan raised a protective arm. Please don't scare them. Remove the dragons, the council representative ordered without even looking at Evan. Transport teams are waiting. Evan froze. Remove them? To where? A secure research wing, the man said calmly, where they can be studied properly and controlled. The hatchlings' cries rose, high and desperate. Heat rippled through the air, faint but growing. Evan shook his head. No, they can't go there. They're finally calm. Please look at them. The representative glanced at the sleeping hatchling on Evan's lap with cold curiosity, as if observing a strange insect. They are unstable, he said. Unpredictable, dangerous. They must be kept under strict observation. They're babies, Evan said firmly. They're scared, not dangerous. One officer stepped forward, irritation flashing across his face. Move aside. We're taking them. Evan did not move. Instead, the bold hatchling, the one who had trusted him first, lifted its head and hissed loudly, tiny sparks flickering between its teeth. The officers froze, startled. The council representative narrowed his eyes. Do you see? He said. They react aggressively. Proof of instability. Evan hugged the bold hatchling carefully, rubbing the soft scales under its chin. It's okay. I'm not letting anyone hurt you. The hatchling pressed its face into his chest again, crying quietly now. Trembling hard, the council representative raised a hand. Enough, remove the human. Then collect the hatchlings. That single sentence broke whatever calm remained. The dragons screamed. 6 tiny voices burst into a sharp, piercing cry that shook the heating lamps. The temperature in the room shot up instantly. Red warning lights blinked along the walls. Evan wrapped himself around the babies as best as he could. Hey, it's okay, I'm here. But the hatchlings were terrified. Their fear rolled out in waves, real physical waves of heat that cracked the metal floor beneath them. The officers stepped back immediately, shielding their faces. What are they doing? One yelled. It's a defensive burst, another said, panicking. If it rises any more, the whole wing could melt. The council representative stepped backward too. Face paling. Evan held the hatchlings tighter, whispering desperately. It's okay. Don't be scared. I'm right here. I won't leave you. Slowly. The heat dropped. Their cries softened. Their bodies relaxed. Against him once more. The officers stared in disbelief. The council representative's voice shook with anger. Their bond with this human is interfering with containment protocols. Evan looked up at him, breath steady. Their bond is what's keeping them calm. For a moment, no one spoke. The council representative finally said, This situation will be reviewed. But understand this. Janitor, your involvement will not last. But the hatchlings, tiny, shaking, exhausted, curled tighter against Evan as if they understood every word, and they knew one thing. They would not survive, being taken away again. The nursery felt heavy after the council's harsh words, as if the very air had learned fear. The hatchlings pressed close to Evan again, their bodies curling around him for safety. Their scales were warm, but their trembling was not from heat, it was from worry. They knew danger even if they could not understand the words. Evan gently stroked the bold hatchling's head. It's all right. I won't let them take you. He spoke quietly, but the promise was strong. Somehow the hatchlings understood. Their breathing steadied. Their tiny claws loosened their grip on his uniform. Outside the nursery, voices argued. Their words leaked through the walls like cold air. We can't allow this bond to continue. He calms them. He's the only one who can. That is exactly the problem. Dependency is dangerous. We must consider the safety of the station and the safety of the hatchlings. A pause. That is not our priority. Evan shut his eyes. The last sentence stung. It wasn't surprising, but hearing it still hurt. The hatchlings were seen as weapons projects, not living beings who cried and shook and clung to warmth. The bold hatchling lifted its head and nudged Evan's chin, sensing his sadness. Its little heartbeat thudded fast and warm against his chest. "Yeah," Evan whispered. "I know. They don't understand." The door slid open again. This time only one person entered, Commander Holly. Unlike the officers before, Holly did not look angry. He looked exhausted, confused, and strangely thoughtful. His eyes softened slightly when he saw the dragonlings sleeping around Evan. "They trust you," he said quietly. Evan nodded. "They need someone. Anyone who treats them like living things." Holly stepped closer. The hatchlings tensed, but they did not cry. They only watched him with worried eyes. "I reviewed the footage," Holly said. "No one has ever calmed dragon hatchlings before. Not like this. The council is unsettled." Evan let out a dry breath. "That's one word for it." Holly ignored the comment. His gaze dropped to the dragonlings again. "Their readings are stable near you. Heart rate steady. Heat output controlled. But when officers entered, they panicked," Evan finished. "Yes, and their heat spike nearly damaged the wing." Evan's voice hardened. "Because they're scared. They've been scared since they were born." Holly hesitated before speaking again. "The council wants them moved tomorrow. They want a full military-level facility." The hatchlings whimpered at the tone of his voice. Evan held them closer. "They won't survive that." Holly stared at him. "Why are you so sure?" Evan didn't answer with words. He gently lifted one of the smallest hatchlings and held it out toward Holly. The baby dragon whimpered and immediately curled back against Evan's chest, trying to hide. Its tail wrapped around Evan's arm like a desperate plea. Holly swallowed hard. "That looks intentional." "It is," Evan said. "They choose who they trust." Holly looked troubled now. Truly troubled. "Evan," he said quietly, "the council says dragons imprint. They bond deeply. And once they do, they see that person as their guardian. Their family." Evan blinked. "Family?" He looked down at the tiny creatures holding onto him. Their warm breaths brushed his skin. Their small wings wrapped around each other and around him. Had they chosen him? Holly stepped back and sighed. "If the council removes them, they will break that bond. And if they break it, the hatchlings could become unstable, unpredictable, maybe even dangerous." The word dangerous echoed bitterly in the air. Evan shook his head. "They're not dangerous. They're just hurting." Holly studied him for a long time. Then, finally, "What do you want to do?" Evan froze. "What I want?" He echoed softly. "Yes," Holly said. "If you believe the hatchlings will only stay calm with you, then say it. Clearly, I'll take it to the council." Evan looked down at the bold hatchling, still gazing up at him with trusting golden eyes. Then at the smallest one asleep in his lap. At the pair sharing the cloth. At the two curled around his legs. They were waiting. They were listening. They were choosing. And suddenly, Evan knew the truth. He was the only thing in their world that felt safe. "I'll take responsibility for them," Evan said firmly. "All of them. Let me be their caretaker." The hatchlings chirped softly, like a chorus of tiny agreement. Commander Hale's eyes widened. "You understand what you're asking? You'd be responsible for the most powerful species in the sector." Evan didn't hesitate. "They're children," he said. "They just need someone who won't be afraid of them." Holly looked at the dragonlings one last time, They looked back. And in that moment, even he could see it. The hatchlings had chosen their guardian. Not through orders, not through training, but through instinct ancient, deep, unbreakable. "I'll bring your request to the council," Holly whispered. "But prepare yourself. They won't agree easily." Evan nodded. The hatchlings curled tighter around him, their bodies warm and trusting. Whatever came next, he wasn't facing it alone. They had chosen him, and he had chosen them. The council chamber of Helios 9 had never been so full. Officers lined the walls. Scientists packed the rows. Even security teams stood tense, unsure of what would happen next. In the center of the room, Evan stood alone, no uniform, no armor. Just a quiet janitor in gray clothes. But he wasn't truly alone. 6 dragon hatchlings clung to him, 2 in his arms. 1 on his shoulder, 3 curled around his legs. Their scales glowed softly, warming the air with a gentle heat. They hissed if anyone stepped too close. They chirped when Evan stroked their heads. They refused to be moved. The council members stared in silence. No one had ever seen dragons act like this. No one had ever imagined they could. The head counselor cleared his throat. "This behavior is highly irregular." One hatchling growled at him, showing tiny glowing teeth. Evan rubbed its chin. "Easy, he's just talking." The room murmured with shock. The counselor continued, but now more cautiously. "Evan, you claim these hatchlings have imprinted on you. But we must consider the galaxy's safety. Dragons are a high-risk species. Allowing a civilian janitor to raise them is necessary." Commander Holly interrupted. Every head turned. Holly stepped forward, holding a datapad filled with readings. His voice was calm but firm. "I've reviewed everything. Heat spikes, heart rates, stress reactions. The data is clear. Their emotions stabilize only near Evan." The counselor frowned. "So you support this madness?" "I support what works," Holly replied. "And this human works." A scientist stood from her seat. "The hatchlings show signs of bonding, deep bonding. Removing them now could damage their brains. Maybe even trigger uncontrollable heat bursts." The bold hatchling puffed smoke, as if agreeing, and under his care, Holly continued. "They show the lowest danger readings we've ever recorded." The room buzzed with whispers at a janitor. A random human. Yet the dragons trusted him more than any expert. Evan took a slow breath and stepped forward. The hatchlings followed, their claws tapping softly on the metal floor. He looked directly at the council. "I know I'm nobody special," Evan said simply. "I sweep floors. I fix small things. I take out trash. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a soldier. But these hatchlings don't care about any of that." He placed a gentle hand on the smallest dragon curled in his arm. "They know I care about them." "That's enough." The hatchlings chirped in agreement. The counselor raised an eyebrow. "Compassion is admirable, but compassion alone cannot control dragons." Evan looked down at the creatures pressed against him and smiled quietly. "Compassion is what controls them. It's what calms them. It's what they understand." A scientist nodded slowly. "He's right. Every creature responds to fear. Or comfort. These hatchlings have only known fear. Until him." The counselor hesitated. "And if we allow this, what future do we create?" Evan lifted his chin. "A better one." The bold hatchling stepped forward, wings spread not to threaten, but to stand proudly beside Evan. Its scales glowed bright gold, brighter than in any recorded scan. Around the chamber, monitors flashed. Readings spiked, not in danger, but in emotional recognition. "They're choosing," a scientist whispered. "They're publicly choosing him." Another council member leaned forward. "If we deny their choice, the psychological damage could, well, it could doom the entire species." Silence fell. Everyone waited. Finally, the head counselor let out a long, tired breath. Very well. By majority vote, Evan, you are officially designated as guardian caretaker of the dragon hatchlings. The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, disbelief. The hatchlings squealed with joy. Evan blinked, stunned. I don't know what to say. The bold hatchling solved that problem by climbing onto his chest and pressing its forehead to his heart. A soft golden shimmer spread across all 6 hatchlings. A biological response never seen before. A sign of unity. A sign of family. Commander Hale smiled for the first time in days. Looks like they said it for you. Weeks passed. Then months. Under Evan's care, the hatchlings grew fast. Their wings strengthened. Their heat became controlled. Their cries faded, replaced with chirps, purrs, and curious sounds that filled the nursery with life. They flew for the first time inside the training dome. They learned their names. They slept peacefully every night, curled around Evan's legs or chest like warm, gentle guardians. Scientists took notes. Officers watched in awe. Everyone agreed. Human empathy had succeeded where technology had failed. One evening, after a long day of flying practice, the dragons, now the size of large hounds, gathered around Evan at sunset. Their glowing bodies cast soft colors across the room. The bold one spoke first in a rough, young voice, barely formed but clear. Guardian. Evan froze. It repeated the word, touching his chest with its snout. The others followed, chiming softly, Guardian, Guardian, Guardian. Evan's eyes warmed. I'm here, always. And years later, when the dragons grew into magnificent creatures feared across the stars, they still returned every night, not to a general, not to a scientist, not to a council member, but to the human janitor who had held them when they were small, their chosen guardian, their first comfort, their true family.